I always thought I was doing the right thing by my family. Funny how being a good daughter can be your biggest mistake. My name is Riley Tran. And 6 months ago I bought a duplex in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Austin. It wasn't my dream home, but it had potential. 2 identical units, separate entrances, shared backyard. The real estate agent kept talking about rental income, but I had different plans. My parents have been struggling since Dad lost his job during the tech layoffs last year, and Mom's part-time work at the community college library barely covered their groceries. When I first showed them the back unit, Mom examined the kitchen cabinets with that critical eye she reserved for things too good to be true. "Riley, we can't accept this," she said, running her fingers along the granite countertops I'd specifically chosen because I knew she'd love them. "It's too much. It's not charity," I told her, watching Dad stand in the doorway with his hands deep in his pockets. That familiar posture of a man who'd stopped believing he deserved good things. "Think of it as an investment in family. Your mother's right, Riley," Dad said quietly. "We raised you to be independent, not to take care of us. But they moved in anyway." Of course they did. The alternative was moving in with their friends, the Nguyens, in their cramped garage conversion, or worse, asking my younger sister Jade for help. That would have lasted about 2 days before someone got murdered. The first month was almost perfect. Mom planted herbs in the backyard: cilantro, Thai basil, mint, the same combination she'd grown in every place we'd ever lived. Dad fixed things around both units without being asked, oiling hinges and replacing weather stripping with the methodical patience of someone who finally had time to care about details again. And I felt like I'd finally done something meaningful with my architecture salary, something that mattered beyond designing other people's dream homes. I should have known it wouldn't last. The comments started small, dropped into conversations like seeds. "The morning light is so much better in your unit," Mom mentioned during our weekly coffee ritual, stirring sugar into her cup with that distracted air she got when she was building up to something. "The back unit feels like a cave sometimes." I looked up from my laptop where I was reviewing blueprints for a client's renovation. "They're mirror images, Mom. The layout is exactly the same, maybe, but yours faces east. And the kitchen window," she gestured vaguely toward my living room, "it just feels more open." I designed both units to have identical natural light. I'd measured the angles myself, calculated the sun exposure, ensured the windows were positioned for optimal brightness. But I didn't say that. Instead, I stirred my own coffee and let her words settle into the growing collection of small dissatisfactions I was learning to ignore. It was Carmen who first pointed out the pattern. Carmen Ruiz, my best friend since architecture school and the only person who'd ever called me out on my tendency to accommodate everyone except myself. We were grabbing lunch at our usual spot downtown when I mentioned Mom's latest observation about the energy being different between the 2 units. "Energy?" Carmen raised an eyebrow, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. "Riley, they're complaining about the free house you bought them." "They're not complaining. They're testing boundaries," Carmen interrupted, and I recognized that tone. It was the same one she used when reviewing contracts with clients who tried to change the scope of work after agreements were signed. "Trust me, I know this dance. My mother perfected it." Carmen's family had imploded spectacularly when she was in college. Parents who'd spent years manipulating her older brother into supporting them financially, then turned on him when he finally said no. She'd watched the whole thing from a distance, armed with the kind of clarity that comes from being the child who escaped early. "It's different," I said. "My parents aren't like that." "Maybe not. But your sister's coming home, isn't she?" The question hit like cold water. I'd mentioned Jade's impending return almost in passing. The way you mention a dentist appointment or a bill you need to pay, an unpleasant necessity that you hope will raise old quickly. Jade, my younger sister by 3 years, though the gap had always felt wider, where I'd been methodical and quiet, building my career one careful step at a time. Jade had been all sparkle and grand gestures. A wellness influencer with 30,000 followers who'd built her brand around morning mantras and expensive smoothie recipes, living in an Austin loft that cost more than my parents' old mortgage, until the scandal broke. I still didn't understand all the details, something about undisclosed sponsorship deals, fake testimonials, and a very public falling out with a business partner who'd exposed Jade's complete lack of actual wellness credentials. The internet had torn her apart with the casual cruelty it reserved for people who'd sold authenticity and been caught performing it. The call had come 3 weeks ago. Jade's voice smaller than I'd heard it since we were children. Riley, I was wondering if I could come stay with you for a while, just until I figure things out. I'd said yes, of course. What else do you say to family? She's your sister, I told Carmen. She's going through a hard time, and your parents are already softening you up for her arrival, Carmen said. The comments about your unit being better. That's not random, Riley. That's preparation. I wanted to argue, but something in my chest tightened with recognition. The way Mom had started mentioning how peaceful my space felt, how much creative energy it had. The way Dad had begun talking about the back unit as cramped even though it was identical to mine. You think they want me to switch units? I asked. I think they want you to offer to switch units, Carmen said. There's a difference. Makes it your idea, your generous gesture. No one's the bad guy. That night I walked through my duplex with new eyes. The front unit I'd chosen for myself because I'd wanted the street-side entrance. The sense of arriving home rather than retreating to a back corner. The open-concept kitchen where I'd spend weekend mornings teaching myself to cook Vietnamese dishes from Mom's half-remembered recipes. The master bedroom where I'd finally hung my diplomas on the wall. A small act of pride. I'd never allowed myself in apartments that were temporary. This was the first space that had ever been completely mine, not shared with roommates, not subject to a landlord's whims, not temporary. I'd painted the walls the exact shade of gray-blue I'd dreamed about. Installed floating shelves for my architecture books, chosen every fixture and finish with the careful attention I usually reserved for client projects. It had taken me 8 years to save for the down payment. 8 years of living in other people's spaces, of designing beautiful homes for other people while I slept on a futon in a shared apartment with thin walls and thinner bank accounts. But as I stood in my living room that night, I found myself imagining Jade in this space, Jade with her ring lights and camera equipment, transforming my carefully curated calm into a performance space. Jade who'd always been able to make any room feel like it revolved around her, who'd never learned the difference between being centered and being the center. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but I recognized the cadence immediately. Hey beautiful sister, landing at Austin Bergstrom tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Can't wait to start this new chapter in such a healing space. The universe is really aligning things perfectly. She'd already booked the flight. Of course she had. I screenshot the message and sent it to Carmen with a single word, help. Her response came back immediately. Change the locks, tonight, but I wouldn't. Because despite everything Carmen said, despite the growing knot in my stomach, I still believed in the version of family I'd built in my head. The version where love meant sacrifice. Where being strong meant carrying everyone else's weight. Where good daughters solved problems instead of creating them. I was still holding onto that version the next afternoon when Jade emerged from the rideshare with 2 oversized suitcases and a smile that could have powered the Ring doorbell I'd installed last month. She looked exactly like someone recovering from a scandal-expensive athleisure, perfectly undone hair, the kind of curated vulnerability that photographed well Riley. She dropped her bags on my front step and wrapped me in a hug that smelled like bergamot and desperation. This place is even more perfect than I imagined. I can already feel the good energy. Over her shoulder, I saw Mom emerge from the back unit. Drawn by the sound of Jade's voice like a moth to flame, the expression on her face was one I recognized from childhood, the soft, worried love she'd always reserved for whichever daughter needed her more. And it had always been Jade who needed her more. My baby, Mom said, and something in my chest went tight and cold. Dad appeared behind her, quieter but no less pleased. Welcome home, Jade. Home, as if the duplex belonged to all of us. Equally, as if my mortgage payments were just a technicality. This front entrance is so welcoming, Jade said, still holding onto my hands. It's like the house is embracing you as you arrive. I can see why you chose this unit, Riley. It has such intentional energy. As if I'd chosen it for mystical reasons rather than practical ones. As if intention was something that could be transferred from one person to another like a lease agreement. Let me show you the guest room, I said, because what else was there to say? You must be tired from the flight. But as I led her through the front door of my carefully constructed sanctuary, I caught sight of Mom and Dad exchanging a look. The kind of look parents share when they're planning something they think is for your own good. The kind of look that makes you realize you've been having the wrong conversation entirely. Carmen's voice echoed in my head as I watched Jade take inventory of my living room, with the calculating gaze of someone who'd built a career out of staging perfect spaces for social media. They're testing boundaries. I was about to find out exactly how far those tests would go. The look lingered between my parents for just a moment too long. And I felt something shift in the air, like the moment before a storm when the birds go quiet and the leaves turn their pale undersides to the sky. The guest room is just down the hall, I said to Jade, breaking the silence that had settled over us like dust. Jade followed me through my living room, her eyes cataloging everything with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd built a career out of curating spaces for maximum visual impact. I watched her take in the floating shelves I'd installed myself, the carefully chosen throw pillows, the way the afternoon light hit the dining table where I'd spent countless evenings working on architectural drawings. "This is so you, Riley," she said, running her fingers along the back of my sectional sofa. "Clean lines, everything in its place. Very controlled. The word sat wrong in the air between us. The guest room had been my office until this morning, when I'd hastily moved my drafting table and filing cabinets into the corner of my bedroom. I told myself it was temporary, just until Jade got back on her feet. Now, watching her set her designer luggage on the bed I'd bought specifically for her visit, I wondered when temporary had started feeling so permanent. "This is perfect," Jade said, opening the blinds to let in more light. "I can already see myself healing in this space. Maybe I'll do some morning meditation videos here. The light is so pure." "Videos?" The word came out sharper than I'd intended. "Oh, nothing major, just some simple content to let my followers know I'm okay, that I'm taking time to center myself and rebuild." She turned to me with that practiced smile, the one that had convinced 30,000 people to buy overpriced wellness products. "Don't worry, I'll keep it low-key, very authentic." Another word that felt weaponized in her mouth. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned what Jade's version of low-key looked like. It started with the morning meditation videos, filmed in my living room at 6 a.m. while I was trying to get ready for work. I'd come out of my bedroom to find Jade cross-legged on my rug in expensive leggings, speaking in the breathy voice she reserved for her spiritual content. "I'm embracing this season of quiet reflection," she told the camera, my carefully arranged bookshelf serving as her backdrop. "Sometimes the universe asks us to step back, to find peace in simpler spaces, to remember what really matters." Simpler spaces, as if my home was a downgrade she was graciously accepting. I tried to slip past her to the kitchen, but she'd held up one perfectly manicured finger weight and continued her monologue about finding gratitude in unexpected places. I'd stood there in my work clothes, coffee maker just out of reach, while my sister performed enlightenment for strangers on the internet. "Sorry," she'd said after ending the recording. "I know it's early, but the light is just so good in here. Your living room has such peaceful energy, it really translates on camera." I'd nodded and made my coffee in silence, but something small and hard had settled in my chest. The second week brought expanded production values. Ring lights appeared in my living room, positioned to catch the morning sun streaming through the windows I'd specifically oriented for my own enjoyment. A small tripod took up residence on my coffee table. Jade's meditation cushion, an expensive-looking thing in sage green, claimed permanent territory in front of my fireplace. "I hope you don't mind," she said one evening, rearranging my throw pillows to create better visual balance for her setup. "I'm just trying to create a cohesive aesthetic for the healing journey." Documentation, mind, as if I had a choice in the matter. But it was the live stream that broke something loose inside me. I'd come home from work on a Thursday, keys in hand, expecting the usual quiet of my own space. Instead, I opened the door to find Jade seated in my living room with her laptop open, speaking animatedly to what looked like hundreds of viewers flooding the chat. Exactly what I needed, she was saying, gesturing around my living room as if she were giving a house tour. "This space just holds such intentional energy. Every detail feels so carefully chosen, so aligned with purpose." She noticed me in the doorway and waved me over with bright enthusiasm. "Oh, everyone, this is my sister Riley. She's the one who designed this beautiful healing sanctuary we're sitting in." Designed sanctuary? The words felt stolen from my mouth. I managed an awkward wave to the camera before retreating to my bedroom, but I could hear Jade continuing the tour, describing my furniture choices and color palette. as if they were part of her spiritual practice, as if my home had been created for her transformation rather than my own life. Later that night, when the live stream had ended and Jade was taking a bath, I called Carmen. "She's treating your house like a rental property," Carmen said after I'd described the past 2 weeks. "Worse, she's treating it like a studio space she doesn't have to pay for. She's family, Carmen. She's going through a hard time. So were you when you were saving for 8 years to buy that place. But nobody gave you a free performance venue and a live-in assistant." Live-in assistant, that's what I'd become, wasn't it? Making sure the kitchen was camera ready in the mornings. Tiptoeing around during her recording sessions. Keeping my own life quiet enough not to interfere with her content creation. "It's temporary," I said, but the word felt hollow even as I spoke it. "Is it?" Carmen asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, your sister just found the perfect setup, free housing. Perfect lighting, built-in emotional support, and a big sister who won't say no. Why would she ever leave?" I didn't have an answer for that. The next morning brought a family coffee date that felt like an ambush. Mom had suggested we all meet at the little cafe down the street. Her treat, I should have known something was up when Dad actually showed up. He usually avoided anything that felt too much like a family meeting. We'd barely ordered before Mom started her campaign. "Jade looks so much better already," she said, stirring extra sugar into her latte. "The peace of this environment is really helping her heal." "She seems to be thriving," Dad agreed. Though he was looking at his hands rather than at me. "It's interesting how different the energy feels between the two units," Mom continued, and there it was, the setup I'd been dreading. "I was thinking about it yesterday when I was watering the herbs. Your unit has such a creative flow, Riley. It's perfect for someone doing artistic work." Artistic work? Jade's morning meditation videos had apparently been elevated to art. "The back unit is quieter," Dad offered, "more contemplative." Contemplative? They'd clearly rehearsed this. Jade looked up from her phone where she'd been scrolling through comments on her latest post. "You know, I've been thinking about that too, Riley. Your space has such incredible energy for content creation. All that natural light. The way the rooms flow together, it's like it was designed for storytelling. It was designed for living." I wanted to say, "It was designed for me." "I would never ask you to give up your beautiful home," Jade continued, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "But I was wondering, and this is just a thought, if maybe we could trade spaces, just temporarily, while I'm rebuilding. The back unit might actually be better for you anyway, more private, more focused, perfect for someone who doesn't need a lot of space." Doesn't need a lot of space, as if wanting things was a luxury I'd outgrown. "It makes sense," Mom said quickly. "You work such long hours anyway, Riley, and Jade's work requires more room to breathe, room to breathe." My mortgage payments apparently didn't qualify as work that required breathing room. I looked around the table at my family, at Mom's expectant face, Dad's careful neutrality, Jade's perfectly practiced hopefulness. They'd clearly discussed this, planned it, decided what made sense for everyone without consulting the person who actually owned the house. "I need to think about it," I said. The disappointment was immediate and unanimous. Mom's face fell. Dad's eyebrows lifted in mild surprise. Jade's smile faltered for just a moment before reassembling itself. "Of course," Jade said. "I totally understand. It's a big change," but her tone suggested she didn't understand at all. None of them did. That afternoon, while Jade was at the grocery store and my parents were visiting friends, I walked through both units with the slow deliberation of someone taking inventory. In the back unit, I saw Mom's herb garden visible through the kitchen window. Dad's reading chair positioned to catch the afternoon light. Their wedding photo on the mantel next to pictures of Jade on me as children. It looked like home. Their home. Then I walked through my unit, the front unit I'd chosen, designed, furnished with 8 years of careful saving and dreaming. I saw Jade's meditation cushion in front of my fireplace. Her ring lights in my living room, her vision board propped against my kitchen backsplash. I saw my space through her eyes, a set, a backdrop, a tool for her rebuilding project. My phone buzzed with a text from Jade. "Found the most amazing lavender honey at Whole Foods, perfect for morning teas on camera. This neighborhood has such good energy for sourcing authentic ingredients." Authentic ingredients. For her performance of authenticity in my living room. I screenshot the message and sent it to Carmen without comment. Her response came back immediately. "They're not asking you to trade spaces, Riley. They're asking you to trade your life for hers. I sank onto my couch, the one Jade had been rearranging daily for better camera angles, and felt the truth of Carmen's words settle into my bones. This wasn't about temporary help or family support. This was about Jade needing a comeback story, and my home being the perfect stage for it. The beautiful space I'd worked 8 years to create was being slowly transformed into someone else's vision, and I was expected to be grateful for the privilege of enabling it. But as I sat there in what was supposed to be my sanctuary, surrounded by the tools of my sister's reinvention, I felt something new stirring beneath the familiar weight of family obligation. It felt like anger, clean and sharp and entirely my own. For the first time in my life, I was starting to wonder what would happen if the good daughter stopped being good. The anger stayed with me through the weekend, a low simmer that made everything feel sharper. I found myself noticing things I'd been training myself to ignore. The way Jade left her expensive skincare products spread across my bathroom counter. The way she'd repositioned my dining chairs to create better angles for her morning shots. The way she spoke about our space when talking to her followers, as if the mortgage was somehow communal. Monday morning brought the official family meeting I'd been dreading. Just a little dinner, Mom had said when she called Sunday night. Nothing fancy. I'll make pho. Pho was my weakness, and she knew it. The slow-simmered broth that took her all day to perfect. The ritual of arranging herbs and lime wedges, the way she'd taught me to hold my chopsticks when I was 5 years old. It was comfort and manipulation wrapped in star anise and fish sauce, and I was powerless against it. I should have insisted we meet somewhere neutral instead. I found myself at my parents' dining table, the same one where we'd had homework, supervision and birthday celebrations, and the painful conversation about Dad's layoff. The table where family business got conducted whether you wanted it to or not. Jade arrived fashionably late, of course carrying a small succulent in a ceramic pot. I found this at the farmer's market, she announced, setting it in the center of the table like a peace offering. The vendor said it represents new growth and fresh beginnings. I thought it was perfect for tonight, as if this were a celebration rather than an intervention. Dad ladled pho into bowls with the careful attention he gave to tasks that let him avoid eye contact. Mom arranged garnishes with the precise movements of someone who'd choreographed this moment in her head. And Jade settled into her chair with the serene confidence of someone who'd already won the argument. Tea hadn't started yet, so Mom said. Once we'd all taken our first sips of broth, we wanted to talk as a family about living arrangements. Living arrangements, not my house, not my property, not my 8 years of saving and planning. Living arrangements, as if we were college roommates working out a lease. We've been thinking about what's best for everyone, Dad added, still not quite looking at me. And we've realized, Jade said, leaning forward with that earnest expression she'd perfected for her wellness content, that the current setup isn't really serving anyone's highest good. Highest good, I'd learned to hate that phrase over the past 3 weeks. Your unit has been so healing for my recovery process, Jade continued, but I know it's been disruptive for you, Riley. And honestly, I think we're both trying to fit into spaces that aren't quite right for our energy, as if we were a unit, a package deal that needed to be optimized rather than to separate people with different needs. The thing is, Mom said, setting down her spoon with the deliberate care of someone about to drop a bomb, we think it would be better for everyone if you and Jade switched units. There it was. The ask dressed up as consensus, the demand disguised as family harmony. Better how? I asked, though I already knew the answer would be a masterclass in creative reasoning. Well, Dad said, finally making eye contact, you work such long hours. You're barely home except to sleep. The back unit would be perfect for someone who just needs a quiet place to rest. As if I were a minimalist monk who'd transcended the desire for space or comfort or choice. And Jade's work requires more room, Mom added, the content creation, the live sessions with her followers. She needs space to spread out, to create. Well, I apparently just needed to exist quietly in whatever corner they assigned me. Plus, Jade said, reaching across the table to touch my hand, the back unit has such grounding energy. It would be perfect for someone who works in such a high-stress field. You could really decompress there, in the unit that faced the alley instead of the street, that felt like a retreat from life rather than an engagement with it. I looked around the table at their expectant faces. They'd clearly rehearsed this, Probably multiple times. They'd anticipated my objections and prepared responses. They'd decided what was fair and reasonable and best for everyone. And now they were waiting for me to agree. It's still your house. Mom said when my silence stretched too long, you'd still be the owner. This is just about optimizing the space, optimizing. As if my life were a workflow that needed to be streamlined for maximum efficiency. Think about it, Jade said, her voice taking on that breathy quality she used for her most inspirational content. You could have the peaceful sanctuary of the back unit, and I could use the front space for healing work that might actually help other people. It's like we'd both be living our purpose. Living our purpose, my purpose, apparently, was to enable hers. I took another spoonful of pho, buying time while my mind raced. The broth was perfect. As always, rich and complex in exactly the way I remembered from childhood. But it tasted like obligation now, like the cost of family membership that I'd been paying my entire life without realizing there was a bill. I need to think about it. I said finally. The temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. Think about what? Mom asked, and I could hear the edge creeping into her voice. We're not asking you to give up anything, Riley. We're asking you to share. The word every oldest child learns to hate. The concept that gets weaponized against you from birth. Share your toys, share your space, share your opportunities, share your life until there's nothing left that's exclusively yours. It would just be temporary. Dad said quickly, until Jade gets back on her feet. But Jade's definition of temporary had already expanded from a few weeks to indefinitely, and her version of getting back on her feet looked suspiciously like building a new life in my living room. I'm just trying to understand the logic, I said carefully. You want me to move to the smaller bedroom, give up the unit with the better kitchen, and hand over the space I specifically chose for myself, so Jade can make videos? It's not just videos, Jade said, and for the first time, I heard something sharp beneath her spiritual serenity. It's my livelihood, Riley. It's how I rebuild after everything that happened, and what I do for work. Isn't rebuilding, that's different? You have a stable career, I don't need what? My own space, my own choices, the home I worked 8 years to buy. The words came out harder than I'd intended. And I saw my parents exchange that look again, the one that said I was being difficult, unreasonable, selfish, Riley. Mom said in the tone she'd used when I was 7 and refusing to let Jade play with my new dollhouse. Family means making sacrifices for each other. Sacrifices, always sacrifices, but somehow, I'd noticed, I was the only one who ever seemed to be making them. When do I get to stop sacrificing? I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire none of us wanted to acknowledge. What's that supposed to mean? Dad asked. It means I paid for college myself while you helped Jade with her business ventures. It means I lived in terrible apartments for 8 years while saving for a down payment. It means I bought this duplex specifically to help you when you were struggling, and now you want me to give up the part I chose for myself. No one's asking you to give up anything, Mom said. But her voice had that tight quality it got when she was losing control of a conversation. You're asking me to give up my home. It's not your home, Jade said, and the mask slipped completely. It's a house, and houses are supposed to serve the people who live in them, not the other way around. I live in it, I own it. I pay for it, and we're family, Jade shot back. That should count for something, family, the word that had been used to justify every unfair arrangement, every unequal exchange. Every time I'd been expected to be bigger than my years and smaller than my dreams. It does count. I said quietly, that's why I bought a duplex instead of a condo. That's why I invited you to stay. But counting doesn't mean I stop existing. No one's asking you to stop existing, Mom said, exasperated. We're asking you to be flexible. Another word I'd learned to hate. It always meant bending. Until you broke. I need some air, I said, standing up from the table. Riley, sit down, Dad said. We're not finished, but I was finished. Finished with being the reasonable one, the flexible one, the one who could always be counted on to accommodate everyone else's needs. Finished with family meetings where everyone's voice counted except mine. I walked out of my parents' unit and around to my own front door, keys shaking in my hand. Inside, I could see traces of Jade's continued colonization, her laptop still open on my coffee table, her ring light still positioned by my window, her vision board propped against my kitchen counter with images of the life she wanted to build in my space. My phone started buzzing immediately. Text after text. Mom, we're just trying to find a solution that works for everyone. Dad, can we please finish this conversation like adults? Jade, I don't understand why you're being so resistant to change. Growth requires flexibility. And then, an hour later, Jade again, I really think you're letting fear hold you back from what could be a beautiful opportunity for both of us. Beautiful opportunity. For her to take my home while I pretended to be grateful for the privilege. I turned off my phone and called Carmen from my landline. They ambushed you, she said after I'd recounted the dinner. Their family, they're trying to help. Riley, listen to yourself, they're trying to help themselves to your house. I sank into my couch, the one Jade had been rearranging daily for optimal camera angles, and felt the full weight of what was happening. My family wasn't asking me to share. They were asking me to disappear. What do I do? I asked. You have options, Carmen said. But first, you need to decide if you're ready to stop being the good daughter and start being the smart homeowner. Smart homeowner. The phrase felt foreign in my mouth. Like speaking a language I'd never been allowed to learn. What kind of options? Legal ones, financial ones. Ones that don't require your family's permission or approval. Through my front window, I could see the lights on in my parents' unit. They were probably still sitting around the table, probably discussing my unreasonable reaction, probably strategizing new approaches to convince me to see sense. For the first time since I'd bought the duplex, I found myself wondering what it would be like to live somewhere where my family couldn't find me, somewhere where the only person I had to accommodate was myself. The thought should have felt selfish. Instead, it felt like breathing. Tell me about the options, I said. Carmen's options turned out to be both simpler and more complicated than I'd expected. Legal boundaries, she explained, weren't just suggestions, they were enforceable. Property rights weren't subject to family vote, and sometimes the only way to stop people from taking advantage of your kindness was to remove the opportunity entirely. First things first, she'd said, document everything. Timestamps, screenshots, records of who has keys and who's been where when. Build a paper trail. It sounded paranoid when she said it. It sounded smart when I found Jade and Dad in my unit at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning, measuring my master bedroom with a tape measure. I'd forgotten my laptop and doubled back from the office, expecting to grab it quickly before my 11 a.m. client meeting. Instead, I found my front door unlocked and voices coming from my bedroom. Not panicked voices, not emergency voices, casual voices, planning voices. Definitely enough space for the meditation corner here, Jade was saying as I crept down the hallway, my phone already recording. And if we move the bed to this wall? There's room for the lighting set up by the window. The closet's bigger than I thought, Dad replied. Plenty of space for camera equipment in my bedroom closet. The energy flow is so much better in this room, Jade continued. It's like the universe designed it for creative work. The universe, not the architect I'd hired, not the contractor I'd paid, not the 8 years I'd spent planning every detail, the universe. I pushed the bedroom door open wider, phone still recording. What are you doing? They both jumped like teenagers caught sneaking out. Dad dropped the tape measure. Jade clutched her notebook to her chest. Riley, Jade said, recovering first with that bright smile she'd perfected for awkward social media moments. Dad was helping me visualize the space. For when we switch, not if, when, you're in my bedroom, I said slowly. Measuring furniture placement for a move I haven't agreed to. We just wanted to be prepared, Dad said, his voice carrying that defensive tone I remembered from childhood arguments, in case you decided the trade made sense. We're not doing anything wrong, Jade added quickly. We're family, and you gave me a key. A key to the guest room, not a key to my entire life. Get out, I said. They both stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Riley, you're overreacting, Jade said. We're just trying to be practical. Get out of my bedroom. Get out of my house. Now. Dad's face went red. Riley, that's enough. We're trying to help you see out. The word came out flat and final. Carrying 8 years of suppressed frustration and 3 weeks of violated boundaries. They recognized something in my voice they'd never heard before, because they left without another word. I waited until I heard my front door close. Then checked every room to make sure they were really gone. In my living room, I found Jade's notebook open on my coffee table, filled with sketches and measurements and plans for my space, room layouts, camera angles, lighting diagrams. She'd been planning her takeover in meticulous detail. One page showed a floor plan of my master bedroom with notes in her careful handwriting. Bed against north wall for better energy flow. Meditation space by east window, equipment storage. In walk-in closet, vision board wall above headboard, vision board wall in my bedroom. Another page showed my living room redesigned around her content creation needs. Main filming area by fireplace. Secondary setup by kitchen bar storage. For props and dining room corner. Better lighting fixtures needed throughout. Better lighting fixtures. In the house I decorated according to my own taste. At the bottom of that page, in Mom's handwriting, Riley's office supplies can go in back unit study. Riley's office supplies. As if my 8 years of architectural drawings and project files were just cluttered to be relocated, I took photos of every page, then called Carmen. They were measuring your bedroom, she said after I'd sent her the pictures, like they were shopping for furniture. Dad had a tape measure, Jade had diagrams, Jesus Riley. They're not asking for your house anymore, they're planning for it. I sank into my desk chair, the one I'd bought specifically for my home office, in the space I'd designed for my work. What do I do? Change the locks, today, and install security cameras? Carmen, they're my family. Family doesn't break into your bedroom to plan its redecoration break-in. The phrase felt too strong, but wasn't that what had happened? They'd used my trust, my key, my absence to enter my private space and plan its transformation. The violation felt intimate and complete. There's something else, Carmen said. I've been thinking about what you told me yesterday, about them expecting you to just accept this trade, Riley. What if they're not planning to ask your permission anymore? The question sat cold in my stomach. What do you mean? I mean, what if they've decided this is happening whether you agree or not? What if they're counting on you being too polite, too family-oriented to actually stop them? That afternoon, I drove to Home Depot and bought smart door locks for both entrances to my unit, the kind that required codes instead of keys. The kind that sent alerts to my phone every time they were opened. I also bought a video doorbell and a small security camera for my living room. Carmen met me at my house to help with the installation. This feels crazy, I said as we mounted the camera in the corner where it could capture both my front door and living room. Crazy as measuring your bedroom for a move you haven't agreed to. Carmen replied, adjusting the angle. This is documentation. We were testing the door locks when Jade came home from wherever she'd been spending her day. I watched through the app on my phone as she approached my front door and tried her key. When it didn't work, she tried it again. Then she knocked. Riley, I think something's wrong with your lock. I opened the door manually, staying in the doorway instead of inviting her in. The lock's fine, I changed it. Her face went through several expressions before settling on hurt confusion. Why would you change the locks? Because you were in my bedroom this morning without permission, measuring it for furniture. I wasn't. We weren't. She stopped, regrouped, tried a different approach. Riley, you're acting like we were doing something wrong. We're family. The word that was supposed to erase all boundaries, justify all intrusions. Family doesn't mean you get to plan my life without asking me. We weren't planning your life. We were trying to solve a problem that affects all of us. The only problem is that you want something that isn't yours. Her spiritual serenity cracked completely. God, Riley, when did you become so selfish? We're trying to find a solution that works for everyone, and you're acting like we're trying to rob you. You want me to give up my home so you can rebuild your career? How is that a solution for me? You'd still have a home, just in the back unit, the unit I didn't choose, with the bedroom I didn't want, facing the alley instead of the street. So what? It's still a house. It's still shelter. As if my home were just a roof over my head instead of the space I dreamed about, saved for, designed according to my own vision of what life could be. You don't get to decide what's enough for me, I said, and you don't get to decide what's too much to ask from family. We stared at each other across my threshold, and I saw her clearly for maybe the first time in my life. Not the little sister who needed protection, not the struggling woman who deserved support, but a person who believed the world owed her what she wanted and that my job was to provide it. I need you to find somewhere else to stay, I said. The word surprised us both. What? You can't stay here anymore. This isn't working, Riley. You can't be serious. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem to solve. She stared at me like I'd announced I was joining a cult. I don't understand what's happened to you. This isn't who you are. But maybe this was exactly who I was. Maybe I'd just been too scared to find out. You have until the end of the week, I said, and closed the door. I leaned against it, listening to her knock and call my name, waiting for the familiar guilt to wash over me. But all I felt was relief, clean, simple relief. My phone buzzed with the security camera alert. Jade was still standing on my front step, but she wasn't knocking anymore. She was on her phone, probably calling Mom, probably calling Dad, probably calling everyone who would listen to tell them how unreasonable I'd become. Let them listen, let them strategize, let them plan their next intervention. For the first time in my adult life, they'd have to do it without my cooperation. I walked through my house and saw it as if for the first time. The floating shelves I'd installed myself, the carefully chosen paint colors, the way the afternoon light hit the dining table where I worked on my designs, the space I'd created according to my own vision, my own needs, my own dreams. It was beautiful, it was mine, and I was finally ready to fight for it. The call came 2 days after I'd given Jade her eviction notice. I was sitting in my living room, my reclaimed living room, free of ring lights and meditation cushions, when an unknown number lit up my phone. Riley Tran, this is Avery Shaw from Shaw and Associates Real Estate. Carmen Ruiz gave me your number. I understand you might be interested in exploring your options regarding your duplex property. Avery's voice was crisp and professional, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who solved problems for a living. Carmen had mentioned her in passing during our lock installation session. A friend from college, who'd moved into commercial real estate and had connections with development firms. I'm not sure what Carmen told you, I said carefully, but I'm not looking to sell, of course not. You've invested significant time and energy into that property, but I represent a development group that's been acquiring duplexes in your neighborhood, and I thought you might want to hear what we could offer just to have the information. Just to have the information, the phrase felt like a lifeline I hadn't known I needed. What kind of development group? Meridian Holdings. They specialize in mixed-use conversions, turning residential duplexes into small commercial spaces or high-end condos. Your property is particularly attractive because of its corner location and the architectural updates you've made. My architectural updates. Someone had been paying attention to the work I'd put into the place. I'm not interested in selling, I said again, but with less conviction. I understand. But would you be willing to meet for coffee? No obligation, just a conversation about market values and options. Sometimes it's helpful to know what you're sitting on, even if you're not ready to move. That evening, Jade knocked on my door with red eyes and a suitcase. I found a place, she said without her usual performance of serenity. A friend in South Austin has a couch I can use for a while. A couch after 3 weeks of measuring my bedroom for her healing sanctuary. That's good, I said, and meant it. I don't understand what happened to you, Riley. We used to be close, as if proximity and exploitation were the same thing. We were never close, I said quietly. I was just available. She stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. I never asked you to be available. You chose to help, and you chose to take it for granted. She hefted her suitcase higher on her shoulder. Mom and Dad are really hurt, you know. They don't understand why you're being so hostile over a simple housing arrangement. Simple housing arrangement. The dismissal was complete and perfect. Tell them I'm protecting my investment, I said. After she left, I called Avery Shaw. We met the next morning at a cafe in downtown Austin. One of those sleek places with exposed brick and pour-over coffee that cost more than I used to spend on lunch. Avery was exactly what I'd expected from her voice. Mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of confident competence that comes from years of closing deals that other people couldn't imagine. Your duplex is interesting, she said, spreading photos across our table. Meridian sent someone to drive by yesterday. The location is prime. The updates are thoughtful, and the lot size gives us flexibility. Double quotes us, as if I were already part of her team. What kind of flexibility? Options. The current structure could be converted into a boutique office space. Design firms love those old duplexes. Or we could tear down and build luxury condos. The neighborhood's trending that direction anyway. Tear down. The words should have horrified me, but instead I felt something like relief. The idea of my carefully designed space being transformed into someone else's vision of success felt poetic in a way I couldn't quite name. What kind of offer are we talking about? Avery slid a paper across the table. The number was larger than I'd expected, larger than I'd dared to hope when I'd bought the place 6 months ago. That's contingent on vacant possession, she said. Both units would need to be empty at closing. Both units. Empty. My parents live in the back unit, I said. I know. Carmen mentioned your family situation, but Meridian's timeline is aggressive. They'd want to close within 60 days. That should give your parents time to find alternative arrangements. Alternative arrangements, such a clean phrase for the chaos it would create. This is hypothetical, I said, of course, but hypothetically. You'd be looking at enough money to buy a very nice condo in the city center, something modern. Something completely yours, no shared walls, no family complications, no family complications. The phrase hit like a shot of espresso. Can I think about it? Absolutely, but if you're interested, we should move quickly. Meridian has other properties there, considering, and this neighborhood won't stay affordable much longer. That afternoon, I drove through downtown Austin looking at condos I couldn't afford 6 months ago but could now, high-rise buildings with dormant and city views. Places where no one could use familial guilt to access your space, where changing the locks wouldn't be an act of rebellion but just routine maintenance. I found myself standing in the lobby of a 30-story tower, looking up at floors and floors of individual units, where people lived alone by choice rather than necessity. The realtor showing me around was enthusiastic about the building's amenities: rooftop pool, fitness center, concierge service. The 23rd floor has a unit that just came on the market, she said, pressing the elevator button. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, incredible city views. The seller's relocating for work, so they're motivated. The unit was everything my duplex wasn't: sleek, modern, completely free of history or family baggage. The living room faced west toward the hills, all glass and light and possibility. The kitchen was designed for someone who cooked for pleasure rather than obligation. The master bedroom had a walk-in closet that could fit camera equipment if I wanted it to. But more importantly, it could fit my entire wardrobe, without negotiation or compromise. The HOA is strict about noise ordinances, the realtor mentioned as we stood on the balcony, looking out at the city. No unauthorized commercial activities, no short-term rentals, very peaceful community. No unauthorized commercial activities. No one would be filming meditation videos in my living room at 6 a.m. What's the price? I asked. She told me, and I realized Avery's offer would cover it completely, with money left over for furniture and a 6-month emergency fund. I'll need some time to think, I said that evening. Carmen brought takeout to my place, Thai food from her favorite spot near the office. How was the condo viewing? She asked, settling cross-legged on my living room floor. Tempting. And the meeting with Avery, also tempting. Carmen opened her pad thai and studied my face. But it feels like running away. From what? From my family, from the house I worked so hard to buy, from the idea of being the kind of person who builds something beautiful. Riley, Carmen said gently. What if running away is actually running towards something better? I looked around my living room, the space I designed and decorated and defended. It was beautiful, but it was also a battleground now, a place where love and manipulation had gotten so tangled I couldn't tell them apart anymore. They'll never forgive me, I said. For what? For refusing to give up your house so your sister can film wellness videos in it. For choosing myself over family. Carmen set down her chopsticks. Riley, choosing yourself isn't the opposite of choosing family. Choosing yourself is what makes it possible to choose family from a place of strength instead of obligation. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through my duplex in the dark, measuring rooms with my feet instead of my eyes, trying to feel what the space meant to me versus what it had cost me. The guest room where Jade had planned her comeback, the living room where she performed healing for strangers, the bedroom where she and Dad had measured for furniture without asking. Every room held memories of violation now. Moments when my boundaries had been crossed and my protests had been dismissed. The house I'd bought as a gift to my family had become a weapon they'd used against me. At 3 a.m., I made the call. Avery, it's Riley Tran. If your offer is still open, I'd like to move forward. Her voice was alert despite the hour, as if she'd been expecting this call. Absolutely. I'll have contracts drawn up by morning. 60-day close. Vacant possession required. Are you ready to have that conversation with your family? I looked out my front window at the back unit where my parents were sleeping, probably dreaming about herb gardens and fixed faucets and the daughter who'd given them a home. Tomorrow, I'd have to tell them they had 2 months to find somewhere else to live. I'm ready, I said. And for the first time in weeks, I meant it completely. The contracts arrived by email at 7 a.m. -1 pages of legal language that boiled down to one simple truth: in 60 days, my duplex would belong to someone else, and everyone currently living in it would have to find somewhere else to be. I signed them in my kitchen over coffee, my pen moving across signature lines with the steady precision I usually reserved for architectural drawings. Each initial felt like a small act of revolution. Avery called an hour later to confirm receipt and walk me through next steps: inspections, appraisals. Title search is the mechanical process of converting a home into a transaction, but first, she said, I needed to provide official notice to all residents. The 60-day clock starts when they receive written notice, she explained. I can have my office prepare the documents, but you'll need to serve them personally. Make sure you get signatures confirming receipt, Legal proof that I'd followed the rules even as I dismantled my family's assumptions about my life. There's one other thing, Avery said. Meridian would prefer if the current tenants don't know about the development plans until after closing. If word gets out that they're planning to demolish, sometimes you get neighborhood opposition permit delays. Cleaner if everyone thinks it's just a regular sale to another homeowner. Let my parents believe someone like me was buying their refuge, not a corporation planning to erase it entirely. I spent the morning drafting the eviction notice, choosing words that were legally precise but emotionally neutral. Notice to quit and vacate premises. You are hereby required to quit and surrender possession of the above described premises to the undersigned on or before. Legal language had its own anesthetic quality. It made the end of my parents' home sound like a clerical error rather than a choice. By noon, I'd made my decision about timing. I would host one last family dinner, a final performance of the good daughter they expected me to be, and then serve the notices afterward. Let them have one more evening of believing they were winning our housing negotiations before they learned the game had changed entirely. I called Mom first. I've been thinking about what we discussed, I said, injecting careful uncertainty into my voice, about the unit trade. Maybe we should have dinner and talk through the logistics. The relief in her voice was immediate and complete. Oh, Riley, I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. Jade will be thrilled. She's been so stressed about finding a permanent place. Jade will be thrilled. My sister, who was currently sleeping on someone's couch in South Austin, probably posting inspirational quotes about how temporary setbacks lead to permanent breakthroughs. Let's keep it simple. I said, tomorrow night, my place. I'll cook. Your place. Don't you think it would be better to meet at ours? Is more neutral territory for this kind of conversation. Neutral territory. As if my own home had become contested ground that required diplomatic immunity. No, I said, my place. 7 o'clock. I spent the next 24 hours in a strange state of hyperclarity, moving through my house like someone taking a final inventory. I cooked with ingredients I knew I wouldn't replace, exotic spices and expensive oils I'd been saving for special occasions. I set my dining table with the good dishes I'd registered for but never used, the ones that had been waiting for celebrations that never seemed important enough. If this was going to be the last dinner I hosted in this house, it would be perfect. Carmen stopped by around 5 to check on me. You're really doing this, she said, watching me arrange flowers I'd bought specifically for the occasion. I'm really doing this. How do you feel? I considered the question seriously. How did I feel? Terrified, exhilarated, guilty, free, like someone standing at the edge of a cliff who'd finally decided to jump. Like myself, I said finally, for the first time in years, I feel like myself. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Dad, punctual as always, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the careful expression of someone who'd been coached on how to handle his difficult daughter. Mom followed with a covered dish that smelled like her famous spring rolls, the ones she only made for reconciliations and special occasions. Jade arrived 10 minutes later in an Uber, looking carefully casual in the kind of outfit that costs $300 but appears effortless. She'd lost some of the glow that had carried her through her first weeks back home. The stress of actually having to solve her own problems had taken its toll. O'Reilly, she said, embracing me with The kind of hug that felt performed for an audience. I'm so glad we're doing this. I've been doing a lot of reflection, and I think I understand now why you were feeling resistant to change. Resistant to change. As if my refusal to give up my home had been a psychological limitation rather than a reasonable boundary I made. Your favorite, I told Mom, gesturing toward the kitchen where beef pho was simmering. Thought it might be nice to have a family meal. It smells wonderful, Dad said, settling into his usual spot at my dining table. Just like home, just like home. He meant it as a compliment, but it landed like prophecy. We ate slowly, savoring both the food and the careful pleasantness we'd all worked to maintain. No one mentioned housing arrangements or unit trades or my recent boundary setting. Instead, we talked about safe topics: Dad's latest woodworking project, Mom's book club, Jade's new meditation practice. It was the kind of family dinner I'd imagined when I bought the duplex. The kind of evening that justified every sacrifice I'd made to create this space for us. And as I watched my parents relax into the warmth of good food and family conversation, I felt the full weight of what I was about to destroy. You know, Mom said over dessert, I've been thinking about the unit arrangement. And I want you to know how much I appreciate your flexibility, Riley. I know it's not easy to give up the space you chose for yourself. Give up, present tense, as if my agreement were a foregone conclusion. Jade has such wonderful plans for how to use the front unit, Dad added. The creative work she wants to do there could really help people, unlike my architecture work, which apparently helped no one. I've been visualizing the energy flow, Jade said, her voice taking on that breathy quality she used for her most spiritual content. I can see exactly how the space wants to be used. It's like the house is calling out for transformation. The house is calling out for transformation. She wasn't wrong about that, actually, I said. Setting down my spoon, I need to tell you all something. The temperature at the table shifted perceptibly. 3 sets of eyes focused on me with the wary attention of people who'd learned to brace for my recent unpredictability. I've made a decision about the housing situation, I continued, but it's not what you're expecting. What do you mean, Mom asked. Though her voice suggested she already suspected she wouldn't like the answer, I stood up and walked to my kitchen counter where I'd left 3 manila envelopes, each marked with a name and dated for tomorrow. Official notice, legally served, properly witnessed. I've sold the house, I said, returning to the table with the envelopes, both units. The new owners take possession in 60 days. The silence that followed was complete and terrible. I could hear the dishwasher humming in the kitchen, the air conditioning cycling on. The distant sound of traffic on the street outside. You've, what, Mom whispered, sold the duplex to a development company. Everyone needs to be moved out by the closing date. Dad's wine glass hit the table harder than he'd intended. Riley, you can't be serious. The contracts are signed. The deposit is in escrow. Jade was staring at me like I'd announced I was joining a cult. But we had an agreement. We were working out the unit trade. We had a conversation. I never agreed to anything. You invited us to dinner to discuss logistics, Mom said, her voice rising. You said you were being reasonable. I was being reasonable, reasonably protective of my own property. The accusation in their eyes was immediate and unanimous. I had lied. I had manipulated. I had pretended to negotiate while planning betrayal. So this whole dinner was a setup? Jade asked. This whole dinner was goodbye. Riley, Dad said, leaning forward with the careful tone he'd used when I was 16 and he was trying to talk me out of a bad decision. You need to think about what you're doing. This is our home. It's my house. I'm the only name on the deed. I pay the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance. I make the decisions. We're family, Mom said, and there it was, the final card, played with desperate certainty. Family doesn't give you the right to my property. Property? Jade spat. God. Riley, when did you become so cold? We're talking about people's lives, not some investment portfolio. I'm talking about my life. The one I built with my own work, my own money, my own choices. What about our choices? Dad demanded. What about the plans we made based on your promises? What promises? I never promised you anything except a place to stay while you got back on your feet. You've been on your feet for 6 months, and Jade, Mom asked. What's she supposed to do? What every other adult does when they need housing. Figure it out herself. The cruelty of it hung in the air between us. I could see them recognizing someone they'd never met before, a daughter who could choose her own welfare over their convenience, a sister who could watch family suffer rather than sacrifice her own comfort. I don't understand what happened to you, Mom said quietly. You used to care about other people. I still care. I just care about myself too. Dad stood up from the table, his face flushed with anger and wine. This is unbelievable. You buy a house, invite us to live in it, let us build a life here, and then sell it out from under us without warning. I gave you 6 months of free housing. That's more than most people get. Most people don't destroy their family over real estate. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting what's mine. Jade was scrolling through her phone, probably calculating how to spin this betrayal into content for her comeback narrative. 60 days, she said without looking up. You're giving us 60 days to find new places, new deposits, moving trucks. 60 days is the legal requirement. Legal requirement, Mom repeated, testing the words like they tasted bitter. You're talking about legal requirements with your family. You didn't seem interested in my family feelings when you were measuring my bedroom for camera equipment. That was different, Dad said finally. How? We were trying to solve a problem, by taking my house, by sharing space more efficiently, by forcing me out of the home I chose for myself. No one was forcing anything, Jade said. We were negotiating. You were negotiating. I was being negotiated around. I pulled the eviction notices from their envelopes and set one in front of each of them. Legal documents with raised seals and official language. Proof that I'd followed every rule except the unwritten one about family coming first. You have 60 days, I said. I suggest you start looking for new places soon. The rental market moves fast. Dad picked up his notice and read it with the careful attention of someone hoping to find a loophole. Mom stared at hers without touching it. Jade photographed hers with her phone, probably already planning her social media response to this family drama. I need you all to sign at the bottom, I said, acknowledging receipt. This is insane, Jade said, but she signed anyway. They all did, because the alternative was arguing with legal reality, after they'd left separately, angrily, with promises to call lawyers and family friends and anyone who might talk sense into me. I cleared the table slowly, washing each dish with the care of someone performing a ritual. The house felt different already. Quieter, cleaner. Mine. In 60 days, none of this would exist. The carefully chosen paint colors, the floating shelves, the kitchen where I'd taught myself to cook Vietnamese food from my mother's half-remembered recipes. Meridian would gut it all, rebuild it all, transform it into something that served their vision instead of mine. But for 60 days, it was still mine, and that felt like victory. The explosion came at 9:17 a.m. the next morning. I was in my home office, my reclaimed home office, reviewing blueprints for a client's kitchen renovation when the pounding started. Not knocking, pounding, the kind of desperate percussion that means someone has moved beyond politeness into pure fury. Through my security camera app, I watched Mom hammer on my front door with both fists, her face red with the kind of rage I'd only seen once before, when she discovered Dad had emptied their savings account to invest in his brother's failed restaurant. Riley, she shouted, loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. Open this door right now. Behind her, Dad stood with his arms crossed, wearing the expression of a man who'd been dragged into a battle he'd rather avoid. No sign of Jade yet. But I could see her small red car pulling into my driveway with the aggressive speed of someone who'd been crying while driving. I opened the door manually, staying in the doorway. We need to talk, Mom said, pushing past me into my living room without invitation. We talked last night. We talked. You ambushed us with legal documents after lying about your intentions for weeks. Dad followed her inside, quieter but no less angry. Riley, this has gone too far. You can't just sell people's homes without warning. It's not people's homes, it's my home. Jade burst through the door carrying her laptop and a manila folder thick with papers. I've been up all night researching tenant rights, she announced, and I think you might have violated several laws with this stunt. Tenant rights, as if my parents had been paying rent instead of living for free. What laws? I asked. Improper notice, for one thing. You can't just spring eviction papers on people during a social dinner. There are procedures. I followed the procedures. I had a lawyer review everything. What lawyer? Dad demanded. The one Avery Shaw recommended. Someone who specializes in real estate law. Mom's eyes narrowed. Who is Avery Shaw? The real estate agent handling the sale. You mean the person who profits from destroying our family? Destroying our family? As if my decision to sell my own property was an act of violence rather than self-preservation. Jade opened her laptop and started reading from what looked like a legal website. According to Texas property code, landlords must provide adequate notice based on the length of tenancy. For month-to-month tenants. You're not tenants, I interrupted. You don't pay rent, you don't have a lease. You're guests who've overstayed. Guests. Mom's voice went sharp with betrayal. We're your parents, Riley. We moved here because you invited us. I invited you to stay temporarily while Dad looked for work. That was 6 months ago. Some things take time, Dad said. The job market isn't what it used to be. And some things take longer when you stop looking. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Dad's face went red. I have been looking. It's not my fault companies don't want to hire someone my age. It's not my fault either. But somehow it became my problem to solve. We never asked you to solve anything, Mom said. We asked you to be patient while we figured things out. You asked me to give up my house so Jade could film meditation videos in it. We asked you to be flexible about living arrangements that would benefit everyone except me. Jade looked up from her laptop. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You've become completely self-centered. Everything is about what you want, what you need, what you're comfortable with. When did wanting to live in my own house become self-centered? When your family needed your help and you chose real estate over relationships, real estate over relationships, as if my home were just an investment portfolio rather than the space where I'd planned to build my life. My family needed my help, so I bought a duplex and let you live here for free. My family wanted more help, so I was supposed to give up the space I chose for myself. Where does it end, Jade? When do I get to stop helping and start living? That's what family is, Mom said, helping each other, sacrificing for each other. Funny how I'm the only one who ever seems to be doing the sacrificing. That's not true, isn't it? When Dad lost his job, I bought this house. When Jade's business failed, I let her move in. When you wanted better living arrangements, I was supposed to give up my space. What have any of you sacrificed for me? The question seemed to genuinely confuse them. We raised you, Dad said finally, 20 years ago. What have you done for me lately? We supported your career. Mom said, we encouraged your education. You encouraged my education because you knew I'd be able to support myself, and eventually support you. That's a terrible thing to say. It's a true thing to say. Jade closed her laptop with sharp precision. You know what, Riley, maybe this is for the best. Maybe we need to see who you really are when the pressure's on. And apparently, you're someone who throws family away when they become inconvenient, throws family away, as if refusing to be exploited was the same as abandonment. I'm not throwing anyone away. I'm choosing myself for once in my life by making U.S. homeless, by stopping the free ride. Mom's voice cracked with genuine hurt. Is that what you think this has been, a free ride? What would you call it, family? Taking care of each other, building something together. We weren't building something together. You were taking something I built. God, Riley, Jade said. Standing up and pacing to my window, listen to yourself. You sound like a landlord talking about tenants, not a daughter talking about her parents. Maybe because you've been treating me like a landlord instead of a daughter. How? Measuring my bedroom without permission, planning renovations to my house without asking, assuming I'd give up my space because you needed it more. We were trying to solve a space problem. You were trying to take my space. There's a difference. Dad sat down heavily in my armchair, the one I'd bought specifically for reading. The one Jade had been using as a prop for her meditation videos. So what happens now? He asked. We find new places, pack up our lives. Start over from scratch because you decided to cash out. As if my decision to sell had been purely financial rather than the only way to reclaim my autonomy. What happens now is you do what every other adult does when their living situation changes. You adapt with 60 days notice with free housing, for 6 months and 60 days to transition. That's more consideration than most people get. Most people aren't family, Mom said. Family doesn't make you entitled to other people's property. Property, Jade repeated, making the word sound obscene. That's all this is to you, isn't it? Property, investment, assets, not the place where your parents rebuilt their lives. Where your sister was healing from trauma. It's the place where I spent 8 years saving to live the life I wanted. Until my family decided to live it for me. no one was living your life. You were living in my house, using my space. Planning my future without asking what I wanted because we thought you wanted to help. Dad said quietly, I did want to help. I bought a house with 2 units so I could help, but helping doesn't mean disappearing. We never asked you to disappear. You asked me to move to the back unit so Jade could use the front for her career. How is that not asking me to disappear? It's asking you to share. It's asking me to give up what I worked for so someone else can have what they want. Mom stood up abruptly, her purse clutched against her chest like armor. I can't listen to this anymore. You've made your choice, Riley. You've chosen money over family, property over people. I've chosen myself over being used. Same thing, apparently. She headed for the door, then turned back. When you're sitting in your expensive new condo, alone, remember that we loved you enough to need you, and you loved us enough to throw us away. The words hit like a physical blow, designed to wound and delivered with surgical precision. I'm not throwing you away. I'm setting boundaries, she repeated, testing the word. 60-day eviction notices are boundaries now, when asking nicely doesn't work. Yes. We never got the chance to ask nicely. You went straight to legal warfare, because asking wasn't working. You weren't asking, you were taking. Dad stood up slowly, looking older than I'd ever seen him. You used to be such a kind girl, Riley. I don't know what happened to you. I grew up. I learned the difference between kindness and being a doormat. If this is what growing up looks like, I feel sorry for you. After they left, the house felt hollow in a way that had nothing to do with emptiness. I walked through rooms that suddenly seemed too large, too quiet, too much like a museum of choices I couldn't do in make. My phone buzzed with text messages. First from Mom, we'll start looking for places today. I hope you're happy. Then from Dad, your mother is crying. I hope this was worth it. Finally, from Jade, I can't believe you destroy our family over a house, but I guess I know who you really are now. I turned off my phone and sat in my living room, my uncontested living room, free of ring lights and meditation cushions and other people's assumptions about how I should live my life. The silence was profound and terrible and entirely mine. For the first time since I'd bought the duplex, I understood that freedom and loneliness might be the same thing. But as I sat in my reclaimed space, surrounded by the choices I'd made and the boundaries I'd defended, I realized I'd rather be lonely in my own life than crowded out of it by other people's needs. The good daughter was gone. In her place sat a woman who'd learned to choose herself, even when the choice felt like exile, even when it felt like the only choice left. The movers arrived on a Tuesday morning, exactly 47 days after I'd served the eviction notices. I watched through my kitchen window as 2 trucks pulled into my driveway, a small U-Haul for my parents' accumulated life, and a larger truck for Jade, who had apparently acquired more possessions during her 3-week stay than seemed physically possible. I'd been dreading this day since the contracts were signed, but as I watched strangers load boxes marked David's Books and Mai's Kitchen, I felt something unexpected: relief. The anticipation had been worse than the reality. After weeks of cold silences and guilt-inducing text messages, the actual ending felt almost gentle. Almost. Dad emerged from the back unit carrying his toolbox, the red metal one he'd had since before I was born, dented from years of fixing things that other people broke. He saw me watching from my window and raised his hand in a gesture that might have been a wave or might have been goodbye. I waved back. And for a moment we looked like neighbors rather than family members in the middle of a property war. Mom appeared next, directing the movers with the military precision she brought to any logistical challenge. She didn't look toward my unit, hadn't looked at me directly since the morning after my announcement 2 weeks ago, but I could see the careful way she supervised the packing of her herb garden, transplanting her cilantro and Thai basil into portable containers as if she were saving refugees from a flood. Jade's moving process was more complex and significantly more documented. She'd turned her eviction into content, posting a series of Instagram stories about releasing attachment to material spaces and finding freedom through forced simplicity. Her followers seemed to think she was making an intentional lifestyle choice rather than being legally compelled to leave her sister's house. Sometimes the universe conspires to push us out of our comfort zones, she'd written in yesterday's post, which featured an artistic photo of empty boxes against my living room wall. I'm learning to see this transition as an opportunity for growth rather than loss. growth through loss. She'd managed to spin my eviction of her into a spiritual journey, complete with branded moving boxes and motivational captions about embracing change. Carmen arrived around noon with coffee and moral support. "How are you holding up?" she asked, settling into my kitchen with the easy familiarity of someone who'd spent the last month helping me navigate the practical and emotional logistics of family exile. "Better than I expected. Worse than I hoped, that's honest," through the window. We watched Jade direct the movers with the confident authority of someone who'd turned displacement into performance art. She'd apparently found a furnished apartment in East Austin, something expensive and temporary that would photograph well for her comeback narrative. "Where are your parents going?" Carmen asked. "Dad found a job in San Antonio, IT support for a mid-sized firm. They're renting a small house near his work." "That's good news," it is. "He seems happier having something to do, somewhere to be needed," and he did. Over the past month, as the reality of moving had sunk in, Dad had thrown himself into job searching with an energy I hadn't seen since before his layoff. The prospect of starting over seemed to have awakened something in him that free housing had put to sleep, and Jade is Jade. She'll land somewhere comfortable and convince herself it was her choice all along. As if summoned by our conversation, Jade appeared at my front door. Not knocking, she'd learned to respect the locked door policy, but standing in clear view of my security camera, with the patient posture of someone who expected to be noticed, I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said, though her tone suggested the word tasted bitter. "Goodbye, and to tell you that I understand now why you did this." I waited. Jade had never met a silence she couldn't fill with explanation. "You were afraid," she continued, "afraid of change, afraid of sharing space, afraid of what it might mean to really support someone's healing journey. I get it. Not everyone is emotionally equipped for that kind of generosity. Emotionally equipped for generosity, even in goodbye." She managed to make my boundaries sound like character defects. "I was afraid," I agreed, "afraid of disappearing into other people's needs." "Same thing, really, not at all the same thing." She studied my face for a moment, perhaps looking for signs of regret or second thoughts. "You know, I had a vision for what we could have built here. A real healing sanctuary. A place where family supported each other's highest good. It could have been beautiful. It was beautiful. Before you decided to redesign it, I never." She stopped, regrouped. "I hope your new place makes you happy, Riley. I hope you find whatever you're looking for in all that space you fought so hard to keep. All that space I fought so hard to keep." As if wanting to live in my own house had been an act of greed rather than self-preservation. "I hope you find what you're looking for too," I said, and meant it. She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you're scared. And sometimes scared people make choices that hurt the people who love them. Sometimes people who love you make choices that hurt you first." She didn't have an answer for that. After she left, I watched from my window as the movers finished loading her truck. Jade supervised with the same attention to detail she brought to her social media content, ensuring that nothing was damaged and everything was documented. When they drove away, she followed in her red car without looking back. Mom and Dad's departure was quieter. No dramatic speeches, no final attempts at reconciliation. Dad loaded the last of their belongings, Mom's sewing machine, the rocking chair they'd bought when Jade was born, with the methodical care of someone who'd learned not to expect help. Mom appeared in my peripheral vision, standing at the edge of the driveway between the two units. For a moment, I thought she might come to my door, might offer some version of goodbye that acknowledged we were still related despite everything that had happened. Instead, she walked to her car and drove away. The silence that followed was different from any quiet I'd experienced in the house. Not the temporary peace of people being out for the day, but the permanent absence of voices that would never again negotiate morning routines or debate dinner plans or fill the air with the casual noise of shared living. I walked through both units slowly, noting what remained and what had been erased. In my parents' former space, I found small traces of their 6-month residency. A scuff mark on the kitchen wall where Dad had bumped it with a chair. A small herb garden by the back door that Mom had forgotten to transplant. A nail hole in the bedroom wall where they'd hung their wedding photo. In my own unit, the evidence of occupation was more subtle but equally real. The living room felt larger without Jade's equipment. The guest room seemed impossibly spacious without her suitcases and vision boards. Even my bedroom felt different, more private, more mine without the knowledge that someone had measured it for camera equipment while I was at work. Carmen stayed for dinner, helping me break in the kitchen table that was finally mine to use, without scheduling around anyone else's live streams or content creation sessions. Any regrets? She asked over takeout from our favorite Thai place. About the sale? No. About how it happened? I considered the question seriously. Maybe I could have been more direct earlier. Could have set boundaries before they became ultimatums. You think they would have listened? Probably not, but I might have felt better about myself. You should feel good about yourself. You did something incredibly difficult to protect your own life. Protect my own life. The phrase felt both too dramatic and exactly right. It doesn't feel protective, it feels destructive. Sometimes those are the same thing. Sometimes you have to destroy the version of yourself that everyone else needs in order to build the version that you can live with. That night, alone in my house for the first time since Jade's arrival 2 months ago, I walked through each room, turning off lights and checking locks with the ritualistic satisfaction of someone recall aiming territory. The silence felt vast and clean and entirely mine. In my bedroom, I found a small envelope on my dresser, cream-colored paper with my name written in Mom's careful handwriting. Inside, a short note: Riley, I don't understand your choices, but I understand that they're yours to make. Your father and I raised you to be independent, and perhaps we succeeded too well. I hope someday you'll remember that family isn't just about who shares your space, but who shares your life. We'll always love you, even when we don't like what you do. Mommy read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in my jewelry box, not because I agreed with it, but because it felt like the end of something that deserved to be marked. The house was mine now, completely and uncontestably mine, for exactly 13 more days. Then Meridian Holdings would take possession, and everything I'd fought to protect would be demolished to make room for someone else's vision of what the space should become. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd won the battle for my home by agreeing to destroy it, but as I stood in my living room, my perfectly quiet, completely private living room, I realized that winning and losing might not be the point. The point was choosing. The point was learning that I could choose myself, even when the choice was hard, even when it hurt people I loved, even when it meant starting over from scratch. For the first time in my adult life, I'd proven to myself that I was worth choosing, that felt like something worth building on. The condo was everything my duplex wasn't: sleek, modern, uncompromised by history or family expectations. 23rd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of downtown Austin that changed every hour as the light shifted across the buildings and hills beyond. When I signed the lease on move-in day, the realtor handed me a single set of keys and said, "Welcome home." A single set, no spares hidden under planters. No extras given to family members who might need to measure bedrooms while I was at work. Just one set of keys for one person living in a space designed exactly for her own life. The furniture I'd chosen was equally uncompromised. A sofa in the exact shade of blue I'd been dreaming about for years, without anyone suggesting it might clash with someone else's meditation cushions. A dining table sized for intimate dinners rather than family meetings. A home office with a door that locked and windows that faced east, perfect for the architectural drawings that were mine alone to create. Carmen helped me move in, making jokes about the building's amenities while we waited for the elevator. Doorman, concierge, rooftop pool, she said, reading from the building directory. You've really committed to the whole living alone by choice lifestyle. It's not a lifestyle choice, it's a life choice. Same thing, not at all the same thing. The elevator opened directly into my Unita detail I'd specifically requested because I'd learned to value controlled access. No shared hallways, no common spaces where conversations could happen without my permission. Just a private entrance to a private life that no one could measure or redesign or claim for their own healing journey. The first week was blissfully, almost aggressively quiet. I worked from my home office without interruption, cooked elaborate meals for one without anyone suggesting I share, spent entire evenings reading in my living room without background conversations about energy flow or lighting setups. The silence felt like luxury at first, then gradually, like isolation. Carmen visited on Friday evening, bringing wine and Chinese takeout from the place near my old office. "How's domestic life treating you?" she asked, settling onto my new sofa with the easy familiarity of someone who'd earned permanent friend privileges. "It's peaceful, peaceful good or peaceful boring." I considered the question while opening the wine, a bottle I'd bought specifically because I liked it, without considering anyone else's preferences or dietary restrictions, peaceful, honest. I said finally, for the first time in years, I know exactly what I want because I don't have to filter it through what other people need. And what do you want? This space that's mine. Choices that are mine. A life that serves me instead of everyone else. That's not selfish, you know, in case you were wondering. I wasn't wondering, but thank you. We ate dinner at my dining table while the sun set over downtown Austin, painting my windows gold and orange and deep purple. From 23 floors up, the city looked manageable, beautiful, full of other people living their own carefully chosen lives in their own carefully chosen spaces. Any word from your family? Carmen asked. Dad sent a text last week. He likes the job in San Antonio. Mom's joining a book club, and Jade is thriving, at least according to her Instagram. She found a place in East Austin, something artfully minimalist that photographs well. She's rebranding her whole presence around intentional living and conscious transitions. Of course she is. Her follower count is actually higher than before the scandal, apparently. Watching someone rebuild their life in real time is very engaging content. Carmen raised her wine glass to Jade's ability to turn any life experience into a personal brand, and to my ability to stop providing free content for it. We drank to that, to boundaries honored and choices respected and lives lived according to internal rather than external demands. After Carmen left, I walked through my condo in the dark, learning its sounds and shadows, the way the city lights reflected off my windows, the particular quality of silence that belonged to a space where no one had ever lived but me. In my bedroom, I opened the jewelry box where I'd stored Mom's goodbye note and read it again. I hope someday you'll remember that family isn't just about who shares your space, but who shares your life. She wasn't wrong. Family could be about shared life rather than shared space, but it could also be about manipulation disguised as love, obligation disguised as generosity, exploitation disguised as need. It could be about disappearing into other people's expectations until you forgot what your own life was supposed to look like. I'd learned to tell the difference. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but I recognized Jade's writing style immediately. Hey, not sure if you've seen, but I just posted about my new place. Really grateful for this whole journey of learning what home actually means. Hope you're finding what you're looking for in your new space too. I clicked through to her Instagram, where she'd posted a carefully staged photo of her minimalist apartment with a caption about releasing attachment to spaces that no longer serve your growth and finding gratitude in unexpected transitions. The post had hundreds of likes and comments calling her brave, inspiring, authentic. The word still felt weaponized coming from her. But as I scrolled through the comments, strangers praising her resilience, her ability to find meaning in hardship, her commitment to growth, I realized something had shifted. Her narrative about forced transition and spiritual evolution was just that, her narrative. It had nothing to do with me anymore. I'd given her 3 weeks of free housing, and the inspiration for content that was apparently launching a successful rebrand. She'd given me a masterclass in the difference between helping and enabling, between family loyalty and self-erasure. We were even. I deleted her text without responding and turned off my phone. Saturday morning brought the kind of freedom I'd forgotten was possible. No one asking about my plans. No one needing access to my space for content creation. No one measuring my furniture for optimization. Just me, deciding to spend the morning on my rooftop terrace with coffee and architectural magazines, planning designs for other people's dream homes while sitting in my own. The rooftop was another revelation, shared space that felt private, because it was chosen rather than inherited. Other residents moved through the area with the quiet courtesy of people who'd all paid specifically for the privilege of solitude. No one needed to negotiate camera angles or meditation schedules. Everyone just existed in their own chosen peace. Around noon, my phone rang with a call from an Austin area code I didn't recognize. Riley, this is Avery Shaw. I hope you don't mind me calling on a Saturday. Not at all. Is there a problem with the closing? No problem. Actually, I have some interesting news. Meridian finished their initial survey of your old property, and they're even more excited about it than expected. The corner location, the existing improvements, the way you oriented the structures, apparently it's exactly what they need for their mixed-use concept. Mixed-use concept. My carefully designed duplex was becoming someone else's vision of urban efficiency. That's good news for them. It's good news for you too. They're so pleased with the acquisition that they want to offer you first consideration on their next project. A condo development in South Austin, something higher end than what they usually build. They were impressed with your architectural background and how well you'd maintained the property. First consideration on their next project, the company that was demolishing my old home wanted to build me a new one. I'm not looking to buy anything else right now, I understand. But I wanted you to know the option exists. Sometimes when you prove you know how to create value, opportunities follow. After she hung up, I sat on my rooftop terrace thinking about value and opportunity and the strange circularity of real estate development. Meridian would tear down the duplex I'd spent 8 years saving to buy. The home where I'd learned to choose myself over family expectations. In its place, they'd build something new and expensive for people who could afford to buy peace instead of fighting for it. The old Riley might have felt sentimental about the demolition. Might have driven by to watch the destruction of spaces. Where she'd once been happy, the new Riley understood that homes weren't museums. They were tools for living, and when they stopped serving that purpose, it was time to build something better. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Brunch tomorrow? I want to hear about your first week of hermit life. Not hermit life, I texted back. Chosen life. Same thing. Not at all the same thing, okay? I'll bite. What's the difference? I looked out at the city spreading in all directions below me, thousands of people making thousands of choices about how to spend their Saturday, who to see, what to prioritize, how to balance solitude and connection according to their own needs, rather than other people's expectations. Hermits hide from the world, I typed. I'm finally showing up for my own life. That evening, as the sun set over Austin and the city lights began to sparkle like scattered jewelry, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows and realized I'd stopped missing the duplex entirely. The grief I'd expected for the home I'd lost. The family relationships I'd damaged. The version of myself who'd tried to love through self-sacrifice simply wasn't there. In its place was something cleaner and more sustainable: satisfaction. The deep, quiet satisfaction of a life lived according to internal rather than external demands. I'd learned to choose myself, and the choice felt like coming home. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning exactly 6 months after I'd signed the sale contracts. I was sitting in my home office, working on designs for a client's kitchen renovation, when the notification popped up on my screen. SOLD-1247 Maple Creek Drive. Above a sking below the subject line, Avery had attached photos of the listing that had gone live the day before. I clicked through them slowly, studying images of a space that bore no resemblance to anything I'd ever lived in, where my duplex had stood. Meridian had built a sleek complex of luxury condos for units arranged around a central courtyard. All glass and steel and carefully curated landscaping. The corner unit, built exactly where my front entrance had been, featured floor-to-ceiling windows and a price tag that made my renovation budget look like pocket change. Luxury living in the heart of Austin, the listing copy read, "These stunning residences offer the perfect blend of privacy and community, with thoughtfully designed spaces that maximize natural light and promote wellness-focused living." Wellness-focused living. Jade would have loved the marketing language. I scrolled through the interior photos: minimalist kitchens with waterfall countertops, bedrooms with built-in meditation alcoves, living rooms designed around natural light and energy flow. Everything was white and gray and perfectly sterile. Beautiful in the way that magazine spreads are beautiful, empty in the way that staged homes are empty. No evidence remained of the herb garden Mom had planted, the floating shelves I'd installed myself, the dining table where we'd held our final family meeting. Meridian had erased every trace of the lives that had been lived there, replacing personal history with market-tested appeal. The irony wasn't lost on me. The company had built exactly what Jade had dreamed of: a wellness sanctuary with perfect lighting and Instagram-ready aesthetics. They'd just done it without her. My phone rang while I was still studying the photos. "I thought you'd want to see," Avery said without preamble. "4 units, all sold within 6 hours of listing. Bidding war on 3 of them. That's impressive. It's unprecedented for that neighborhood. Your property was the catalyst they needed to upgrade the whole area. 5 more duplexes on the street are getting demo permits this month." My property, even though I'd sold it months ago, Even though other people now lived where my parents had tended herbs and Jade had filmed meditation videos, Avery still called it mine. I'm glad it worked out for everyone. Speaking of which, that offer I mentioned, Meridian's South Austin project, they're breaking ground next month. And they'd like to talk to you about the penthouse unit, apparently. They were so impressed with how you'd maintained your duplex that they want to offer you preferential pricing on a penthouse. The company that had demolished my carefully designed home now wanted to sell me a new one. I'm happy where I am, I know. But the offer includes design consultation rights. You'd essentially be buying a blank slate and working with their architects to create exactly what you want. Exactly what I want. The phrase that had become the organizing principle of my life. Send me the details, I said. I'll take a look, after hanging up. I walked to my living room windows and looked out at downtown Austin. From 23 floors up, the city looked like an architectural model, clean lines and purposeful design. Thousands of people living in spaces they'd chosen according to their own needs and preferences. 6 months ago, I'd been fighting for the right to live in my own house. Now I was being offered the opportunity to design a new one from scratch. With no family input required and no compromises necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Saw the listing for your old place. Thoughts. I sent her a screenshot of the marketing copy about wellness-focused living and added, Jade would have felt so seen. Have you heard from her lately? I checked Jade's Instagram. Something I'd stopped doing months ago, her feed showed. A carefully curated life in her East Austin apartment, morning meditations, healthy smoothies, inspirational quotes about growth through adversity. Her bio now read, wellness entrepreneur, conscious living advocate, finding home within myself. Her follower count had indeed grown significantly. The comments were full of praise for her authenticity, her resilience, her ability to create beauty in any space. She'd turned our family crisis into a successful personal brand. Just as I'd predicted. Not recently, I texted Carmen back, but she seems to be thriving. That evening, as I was cooking dinner in my kitchen, a simple pasta dish I'd been perfecting for one, my phone rang with a call from a San Antonio area code. Riley, it's Dad. His voice sounded different, stronger, more confident than I'd heard it in years. Hi, Dad, how are you? Good, really good, actually. I got promoted last month, senior systems analyst, and your mother's been volunteering at the library here. She loves it. That's wonderful. Listen, I was calling because we drove through Austin last weekend, and we saw what happened to the duplex. I waited, unsure whether he was calling to accuse me of destroying their home or to acknowledge that I'd been right about the development potential. It's beautiful, he said finally, very modern, very expensive looking. Your mother said it looked like something from a magazine. Meridian did a nice job. I wanted you to know that we understand now why you sold, not just the financial part, but the other part, about needing space that's yours. The admission hung between us like a bridge I hadn't expected him to build. Thank you for saying that. I should have said it months ago. We should have listened when you tried to set boundaries instead of pushing until you had to choose between the house and us. Dad, no, let me finish. You worked hard for that place. You deserve to live in it the way you wanted. We lost sight of that when we got focused on what we needed instead of what you'd already given. The apology I'd stopped expecting arrived, with quiet grace, without dramatics or demands for reciprocal forgiveness. How are things between you and Mom? I asked. Better, harder in some ways, but better. Turns out we needed to learn how to be married to each other instead of being married to the idea of taking care of our kids. And Jade, he laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from him in years. Jade is Jade. She calls every few weeks to tell us about her latest revelation. She's convinced the whole duplex situation was the universe teaching her about detachment. Of course she is. The funny thing is, she might be right, just not in the way she thinks. We talked for another 20 minutes about his work, Mom's book club, their small house with its manageable yard and neighbors who didn't know our family history. It was the easiest conversation we'd had since before his layoff, maybe because we were finally talking as adults rather than as parent and child, locked in patterns we'd outgrown. After we hung up, I sat in my living room as the city lights came on below me, processing the strange completeness of the moment. My family had scattered to different cities and different lives, but everyone seemed to be landing somewhere stable. Dad had his job and his sense of purpose. Mom had her book club and volunteer work. Jade had her apartment and her personal brand, and her 30,000 followers who validated her version of events. And I had this, a space that was entirely mine, work that fulfilled me, friends who respected my choices, and the hard-won knowledge that choosing myself had been the right decision, even when it felt selfish. My laptop chimed with an email from Avery containing details about the Meridian penthouse. Floor plans showing a 2-bedroom unit with a home office, a chef's kitchen, and a private terrace. The kind of space I could design exactly to my specifications, with no input required from anyone except the architects I'd hire to execute my vision. I studied the plans the way I'd once studied my duplex before buying it, calculating natural light, imagining furniture placement, considering how the space would serve my actual life rather than some hypothetical version of it. The price was substantial but manageable, especially with the equity from my duplex sale. More importantly, it represented something I'd never had before: the opportunity to build a home from scratch according to my own standards rather than adapting to what was available or affordable. I opened a new email and began typing, "Avery, I'm interested in discussing the penthouse option. Can we schedule a meeting next week to review the customization possibilities?" Best, Riley. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit send. Carmen arrived an hour later with Thai food and a bottle of wine, appearing at my door with the intuitive timing of someone who'd learned to recognize when I needed company. "So," she said, settling onto my sofa with her usual directness, "I heard you're considering becoming a penthouse person. I'm considering designing my own space from the ground up." "Same thing." "Not at all the same thing," she laughed. 6 months ago you were fighting to keep a duplex you'd compromised on. Now you're planning to build exactly what you want without considering anyone else's needs. That's growth. That's boundaries." "Same thing." I poured wine into glasses I'd chosen specifically because I loved them, not because they matched anyone else's aesthetic preferences or dietary restrictions. "I had coffee with my old coworker Jessica last week," Carmen continued. "She asked if you'd lost your mind, selling a perfectly good house to move into a rental. What did you tell her?" "That you'd found your mind, finally." We clinked glasses to that, to minds found and boundaries honored and homes built according to internal rather than external specifications. As the evening wore on and Austin glittered below us like scattered jewelry, I realized that I'd stopped measuring my choices against other people's expectations entirely. The guilt that had shadowed every decision for months had simply evaporated, replaced by something cleaner and more sustainable: the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can trust yourself to see who's well. Tomorrow, I'd start designing a penthouse that would serve no one's needs but mine. Next week, I'd meet with architects who would execute my vision without requiring family consensus. Next month, I'd break ground on a space that would never be measured by anyone but me. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that would be measured by my standards rather than someone else's standards of what I should want, need, or deserve, and that felt like the most authentic thing I'd ever done. The city spread out below us, full of people living in spaces they'd chosen for their own reasons, making decisions based on their own values, building lives that served their own definitions of success and happiness and home. I raised my glass to all of them, and to the woman I'd finally learned to be, someone who chose herself not because it was easy, but because it was necessary, someone who'd learned that the most radical thing you can do is live your own life.